Hey guys, it's Lumen. Today, I'll be reviewing the highly anticipated Demon Slayer collab with my thoughts on the top and mid rarity cards, plus a brief look at the bottom rarity. The info that is displayed in this video comes from Product, your one-stop shop for all translated news from the JP server. I highly encourage you guys to check out the website, as it has become a mainstay for me in keeping up with the news. I, along with other players, also write articles occasionally on the blog section of the website known as PDX Academy, so do check that out from time to time. First up, we have the main character, the protagonist, Tanjiro Kamado. You know, I think in the movie at least, they say it the other way, like Kamado Tanjiro, but I don't know. Here it says Tanjiro Kamado. So he's a transform card, so the transformation active also includes a full defense break. And that's really convenient for killing the pesky Dragon Seed in Shura 2 and Ultra 2. Now granted, because of Tanjiro's post-transform being fire and its active generating fire orbs, you're most likely going to use them on a fire attribute team. And even though fire attribute teams have the easiest time in just naturally dealing with the Dragon Seed, Tanjiro makes it even more convenient by not even having to worry about it at all. Instead, you just defense break and go. So it's really convenient in that scenario. Post-transform wise has a ton of personal damage. He's got VDP, he's got triple 7Z, and he's even got a Devil Killer, which is especially valuable in today's current endgame due to Gilly's Legato in Shura 2 and Ultra 2. But even if you're looking at Ultra 1, you got the Devil Floor that is really thick. So that's also important too. The active compacts a ton of value with a burst, a recovery buff, and orb generation on a ridiculously fast cooldown. So I've been looking a lot from the context of Shura 2 Ultra 2, and again, this post transformation active is ridiculous because the fast burst and the fast recovery buff help counteract the debuffs that come up so often. So this is absolutely amazing in that regard. It's great for Seina. I won't lie, he's a great sub for Seina. He covers a lot of utility and even brings along a ton of damage as well, so he's just great in that sense. The leader skill is ridiculously brainless, after transforming of course, with only a match of 4 fire orbs needed for a bunch of extra combos and a shield. However, the passive typing multiplier requirement may be a bit awkward because you need to bring along subs with either a water attribute or attacker type. It's not directly based on fire attribute, so it's a little counterintuitive, but I don't think it's the end of the world. It's just something to take note of when you're building for his team. And then if you look at the equip, it's a really expensive version of Riku. And you know, the active might be a bit better, but a lot of the value in equips is based on the awakenings, and to me it just looks like a Riku clone with an extra second of time, and that's not enough for me to say, hey, I would prefer this over Riku, especially because Riku is so much more accessible in that it's a limited time farmable. And he's not really farmable in the traditional sense, but he is obtainable for free. So I do consider him somewhat of a farmable. Moving on, we have Muzan Kibutsuji. He is the ultimate antagonist of the series. So yeah, Muzan Kibutsuji, he's, you know, prefacing the review, he's probably the character I am most excited about in terms of just pad gameplay. So base form wise, potentially 4 skill boosts with 3 or 4 greater than 80% HP, as well as 2 combo orbs. So, you know, right off the bat, you look at it and the awakenings might feel a little bit underwhelming, but that's because if you look at his niche, it's actually pretty strong. So moving on to active, his active is actually insane because it generates a ridiculous 12 dark orbs in the form of 2 consecutive rows on the top and the second from the top. So what's amazing about this is, one, you can break it up into 2 rows, right? You can unmatch the second to the bottom row, second to the bottom. You can unmatch the second from the top row and then match the top row, right? And then you can remake that row, and then that's 2 turns, 2 rows. Or you can just swipe it and it's an instant combo orb. So it's actually ridiculous in that sense of swiping. Amazing for farming. And because it's on an 8-turn cooldown, you could technically get away with a system of Muzan where you have endless amounts of rows. Granted, you need to row break every time, and that is a bit inconvenient, but it's still absolutely amazing in my opinion. Leader skill is also ridiculous with a brain dead 20x attack multiplier for simply being above 50% HP. So as long as you're above 50% HP, one Muzan will give you 20x attack. So if you have 2 of them, that's 400x attack for simply being above 50% HP. It's actually ridiculous. And you also have an auto heal effect in the leader skill, so that let's say you take some damage, you can heal it up just from the leader skill alone. And all you have to do is just match orbs. So it's actually ridiculous. Absolutely broken for ranking, absolutely broken for farming. Now, in terms of endgame, yeah, he might not have a lot of viability, it's not that great, yada yada. But in terms of farming, he is truly a groundbreaking card that's actually so busted. I can't even emphasize, it's so strong. So yeah, it's why I really like the character. I mean, yeah, as a fan of the series, I don't like Muzan that much, I guess, like cheering for the protagonist. But in terms of pad gameplay, I mean, he's just unrivaled in terms of value. And you might think, hey, but endgame, I only care about the endgame. Sure, but the game isn't always about the endgame. And in fact, I like to put a lot of weight on farming because, you know, whenever I'm trying to do something, right, like I'm trying to build an endgame team, or I'm trying to build a team to beat the challenge, or a team to do quests, right, oftentimes it requires resources, right? And when you run out of resources, you become very limited in what you can do right away. Oftentimes you're forced to just scrounge up more resources to barely squeak by with this team, and then all of a sudden you're moving on to a new team and you have no more resources anymore. And so for me, farming is so important because it's the essence of obtaining resources efficiently. And because resources are always needed to do things in the game, right, to build teams and run dungeons and whatnot, farming will always be a constant focus, right? It's always a constant perspective that should never be ignored, right? Just as you have the end game perspective, you should also keep in mind the farming perspective, the farming value. So yeah, Muzan in that respect is just absolutely amazing. And most recently in Japan, he's being used to farm the gem for Gore Chaos's ultimate evolution. And you know, Gore Chaos Ultimate Evolution, that guy's a beast. Like, he has billions of health. And, you know, Muzan just makes that build go, and he makes it so much easier. Now, granted, there are knockoff variants. You got, the most famous one is probably Bleach's Okiora Shifar. He was used, you know, I used him with Virgil to farm and skill up Gore Chaos and Gore Face when Sin Dragons first came around. So there are subtle replacements, but Muzan is just so strong. And, you know, he's just, I guess if you were comparing to Okiora, it's just pure power creep. Just double the multipliers. So strong. So anyway, after fanboying so hard on the base, let's move on to Ultimate Evolution. So Ultimate Evolution has potentially 4 skill boosts, 777 guard break, skill charge, very rainbow-esque, and it makes sense when you look at his active and leader skill. It's just a rainbow-oriented card. Active is a decent devil spike with an unlock and full rainbow board, but it's on a pretty long cooldown. And you might say, hey, you got skill charge, which effectively halves it, but skill charge in my experience is not the most consistent thing. In fact, it's very inconsistent. Unless you have something that makes it consistent, then it's just not something that occurs that often, and not something that can be relied on to say, hey, the cooldown is actually 7 turns. No, it's the cooldown is 14 turns, and if you're lucky, you can get your active up a little bit faster than normal. So there's that. He's a somewhat bland rainbow leader skill kind of guy. Like, his passive requirements, passive multipliers require dark attribute cards or devil type cards, right? And then he provides +2 combos, 9x attack, and a shield when matching 4 or more color. And the thing is, I look at that and then I look at Valentine's Ideal, and it's basically a carbon copy. They look almost exactly the same, except Valentine's Ideal has a stronger attack multiplier and the typing requirements are a bit different. So for me, I look at that and I'm like, I mean, you already have a superior leader option. And even though the active is sort of different, and you can pick away at you can nitpick at the awakenings and whatnot, it's just not really much of a difference, and honestly not worth it when compared to the sheer value of the base. And you know what? You can call me out. You can say, hey, I'm biased towards the base. That's true, but are you really gonna say like the Evo is better? Because in my mind, you can replace the Evo with something better, right? But for the base, the only other option you have is something that's twice as worse. So I don't know. It just seems like the base has so much more potential value. Again, it depends on your priorities. If you don't farm, you're probably more inclined to use the Ultimate Evolution. But if you do farm or you do play ranking, and yeah, the value of the base is just probably too large to ignore. Of course, looking at the equip is very, very strong Dark Row supplement, like same amount of rows as Eris and Chuan, but it has an 80 HP awakening, so you could potentially deal more damage. Although I do want to point out that a lot of these row equips for farm builds and stuff is used for like low HP, like Shivnia and V and Lubu and cards like that. So it's kind of awkward in that sense, but it's still pretty strong. I would say though it's not that great because there are replacements like Chuan again, and then Eris's Apple. So yeah. Moving on, we have another protagonist, I guess. Kyojuro Rengoku. Cool. He's the Flame Hashira. So his base is heavily oriented around VDP, and I personally dislike that because it's pretty inconsistent, right? Like if you want to deal damage, you gotta VDP, but you're not gonna VDP every turn because it costs so many orbs. So most of the time you're just dead weight, and then for once in a while you have some great damage, and that's not preferable in my opinion. I would rather just consistently deal damage every turn, and even though I don't have the same kind of burst potential, at least I'm contributing each and every round with my consistent damage, like 7C and 10C, things like that. Active provides enough orbs to activate VDP, so 9 fire, and the extra combos make it easier to reach 7 combos along with the box. So even though extra combo leads have been prevalent everywhere, Nadeko, Seina, it's just everywhere, so VDPing and hitting 7C is not the end of the world. But for some players who don't have the luxury of extra combo leads, maybe you need a VDP and 7C and you can't do it, so the Rengoku's active should make it quite a bit easier to do so. Leader skill wise, he's got a scaling attack multiplier based on the number of orbs blobbed together, which means again the box burst potential is massive. So if you match a VDP, you're gonna be doing ridiculous damage. But overall damage consistency is pretty low because you're not matching 9 fire orbs linked together and you're only matching like 6. It's not going to be a lot of damage because the attack multiplier scales up for each orb. So if you're only matching 6, then you're on the lower end of that scale, and that's kind of a yikes. So yeah, I just don't like Rengoku feels like a very burst heavy kind of card. Like if you are just swiping boxes all day or you're matching VDPs all day, I could see it being really, really strong. But most content isn't like that. So in that sense, I feel like he's very limited and very niche, and honestly not that great for a lot of things. If you look at the Ultimate Evolution, we have triple 7C swapping in for the triple VDP. So I prefer that much more, as I said, because it's much more consistent damage. 7 combos you can get every turn, so you're going to be a lot more consistent with triple 7C than triple VDP. No VDP in this form though means you can't pierce through Void Shield. So even if you got a lot of damage, if you come up against an enemy with a Void Shield, then you're not going to be able to penetrate unless you hit lower than that. And Rengoku will probably hit very hard and probably higher than that in most cases. Nice cleric active for sure to an ultra too, but I do want to say that he's overshadowed by the power of Christmas Gremory and Nezuko. So both of those are considered to be the elite options for Seina teams in terms of clerics. And Rengoku, even though he's not bad himself, he just hard for him to compete when there's so many great options already. Very tanky red row swipe lead. So I want to say red row in quotes, right? And so yeah, I'll get into that later. So very tanky red row swipe lead that has the coveted 3 extra combos effect, which can be identically paired to generate 7 combos with 1 red row. So the reason why I have the red row swipe lead in quotes is because the attack multiplier is based on matching 7 combos, not matching a red row. However, if you match a red row or blob of red, right, with more than 6 linked orbs, you can reach the 7 combos. So I say it's a pseudo swipe lead, where if you swipe a red row, you can technically trigger the multiplier as well. So it's very iffy, and it relies on you pairing with another Rengoku. So I guess it's a little awkward, but you know what? It could function that way and could be great for swiping some earlier arena. So moving on to equip, we have a gemstone spike active based on VDP, and has a skill boost, 80 HP, 2 fire OE for good team support, but feels a bit inferior in my opinion to the Super 1 equip. It's called Rider Belt like Cyclode, I think. Rider Belt Cyclode. Yeah, and it feels inferior because 80 HP feels very pointless because it's not going to be used all that often, right? Most of the time enemies are hitting you so hard in the end game that you're just not going to be above 80 HP all that often. So that means the awakening is dead weight for more than half the time, and thus it's not that great. Where Super 1 trades that out for another fire OE, which will be more consistent throughout the course of the dungeon, and it even tacks on a nice blind resist for extra coverage. And yeah, it's nice because you can pair with like the Samurai 3 equips like Osafune, which is Hakeda Shingen's equip, and then you have Yoshimitsu, which is Toyotomi Hideyoshi's equip. So there's that. Okay, moving on to 7 stars. First, we have Nezuko Kamado. So has the waifu factor. That's pretty important for me. Okay, moving on to actual gameplay implications. Nezuko has lots of effective skill boost pre-transform. So she's a transform card, and she has lots of effective skill boost pre-transform with 3 skill boosts and a 2-turn haste upon transforming. Pretty decent personal damage after transforming with double VDP and double 7C, and she has decent utility with the cloud resist and the L unlock. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on the endgame, right? Because the endgame is short to ultra 2. So I'm going to be focusing there when I do my endgame analysis. Now, if we take a look at the endgame, Nezuko, as I mentioned, is an elite cleric option for Seina teams, right? The unfortunate part about her is that her cloud resist comes after she transforms, which means that on the floor you needed the cloud resist, floor 1, she won't have it. And I can't remember any other floor that you would need cloud resist, so it's truly unfortunate that she only has it after transforming. But oh well, it is what it is. She does also have an L unlock. I guess you could say it's generally covered by Horus, but it's still nice utility, especially because she has different color coverage than if you're running Horus. So you have more colors to L unlock with. So that's great. Cleric active. So I said she was an elite active, and this is why. Her active is immensely powerful for sure to Ultra 2. It can clear all sorts of debuffs, useful on every single floor that you need it. Absolutely amazing. Leader skill is pretty tanky for matching fire and heal. So you gotta match fire and heal, but you got no attack power. So if you're thinking of trying to lead her, you're probably gonna struggle with damage restraints later on. And then of course, if we move to the equip, which is her box, it feels like a fire variant of Achilles shield, but it carries a full cleric active instead of a big spike. So again, comparing to Achilles shield. Feels somewhat obsolete because tape isn't used at all except on one floor of Shura 2, and that one floor is dependent on a 33% chance to spawn. An enemy that has a 33% chance to spawn, I mean, and tape is just isn't used, okay? Like, I'm digging into the details way too hard. Tape just isn't used right now, so the equip kind of sucks in that sense. That it's not relevant. It's a bit archaic. Moving on, we have Zenitsu Agatsuma. So Zenitsu is another transform card, 4 effective skill boosts pre-transform with 2 skill boosts and a 2-turn delay. So I prefer haste. So Nezuko has haste, right? And Zenitsu has delay. And I prefer haste over delay, mainly because you can stack a bunch of haste, but you can't stack delays, right? If you want to use a delay, you delay, and no other delay can be used. Like, you can't delay and then delay again and again and again and again. So in that sense, it's not my favorite cup of tea, but it's better than nothing. And effective skill boosts are immensely valuable. Post transform wise, has a ridiculous attack stats. Normally I don't pay attention to stats that much, but I do have to say Zenitsu's attack stat is ridiculous at 6,496 attack. Holy cow. He has tons of TP after transforming, which might be more inefficient compared to 7C, VDP, 10C in terms of just pure raw damage output, but he can deal massive amounts of damage just by matching 4 linked light orbs. That's it. TPA light, easy damage. And his attack his attack stat is so high that like the damage output is immense. It's much more stronger than you expect, in my opinion. Active is a super short time buff and a decently strong burst. It's pretty short, and the burst is actually pretty strong, like 2x. Holy cow, on a 2-turn cooldown. I mean, you know, mulling over while you Zenitsu, it could be a lot of fun to just have double damage with 2 Zenitsus. So who knows, maybe I'll try them out. Health conditional shield, it always worries me, because if you encounter multi-hits, you're vulnerable. And large multi-hits, right? Small multi-hits, you'll probably tank all of it, but large multi-hits, oh no, you could easily die. And because enemy attacks are just so strong in general, the shield might not even last for the health conditional area it's active in. Like, for example, it's active above 50% HP, but maybe the hits are so large that even with the shield, you get knocked down below 50% HP really quickly, and then another attack could kill you, or you get killed by the preempt next turn. It's just too iffy, and I don't like it that much. The third equip with 2 TPA, following Xerox Core's equip and Valentine Akine's equip, it has an immensely strong spike and invincibility shield on a reasonably low cooldown. I mean, it's pretty short, 14 turn cooldown, and you get 100% shield and a gigantic light spike. I mean, come on, that's pretty good. Even though it's TPA based, I think it's pretty good. Okay, next we have Inosuke Hashibira. So Inosuke is this, in his base, he has the second fastest damage absorb void and color void active, behind DVDC's Revan. And Revan has like a suicide, while Inosuke just has time buff, so Inosuke doesn't even have any penalties. And he's barely slower than Revan, whose suicide's all the way down to 1 HP. So that's that. Potentially 5 effective skill boosts with relatively decent damage, especially with 7C Super Awakening. Like, I don't like TPAs, but they are damage, right? They do provide damage, and you know, with triple 7C and a couple TPAs, you can deal relatively decent damage. I can't deny it. I don't like it, but I can't deny it. The full poison resist is a nice utility for sure. Could have been such a great with swipe lead, but he has a combo clause, which means swiping is not really doable. No shield means certain death. Well, not certain death, but near certain death in endgame. So don't try to run him in endgame, or make sure you're very well prepared. Okay, so the ultimate evolution switches focus to VDP and ditches all other damage awakenings. Has a full gemma resist, 2 team HP, and L unlock. So that's pretty great utility on the side. But yeah, he gets rid of all the damage awakenings. Now he's just pure VDP stick. He's an interesting column swipe active with the shield for wood attribute, and it's pretty long shield too. So you got other options like Zelgadis from Fujimi, Seal from Gongo Collab, Cammy from Street Fighter Collab, etc. But I think Inosuke has one of the longer shields combined with that column, double column orb generation active. So yeah, pretty cool. Leader skill has outdated multipliers for the activation requirements of matching 7 combos and blobbing 4 wood orbs. It's just, for that amount of effort, you're giving those multipliers. It's like when you're an employee of a company, you know you're being underpaid, right? You just gotta negotiate for better terms or walk away. And in this case, you can't negotiate with PNGs, so you just walk away. Yeah, so leader skill wise is not something I would really consider seriously. So now we move on to the equip, and the equip is arguably the most valuable form of Inosuke. It has skill boost double team HP and double regular HP stat boost awakenings. And even though you might think, what the heck is going on with these stat boost awakenings? I mean, they're more HP and they stack along with the team HP as well. So it's just insane, especially because there's such an emphasis on having lots of health in Shura 2 and Ultra 2. Inosuke's equip is insane for the skill boost, for the transform, the HP, the team HP, for the health. And last but not least, you have a great 2-turn Color Void and Fujin active on a kind of long cooldown, but it's still a really nice active that can be used in Shura 2 Ultra 2 to get rid of, to bypass Sharius, right? Let's say you get an annoying icky color absorb. Well, use Inosuke's equip and get through that easy peasy. Or you can run it in Ultra 1 and have it be your insurance policy against Green Manoa. So yeah, use one a lot of different ways. Very, very, very strong. Okay, next we have Giyu Tomioka. So I said Rengoku was the Flame Hashira, and Giyu Tomioka is the Water Hashira. So Giyu has, in his base form, he's got lots of EDP, and you can go with either Devil Killer augmentation or more skill boost. So it depends on what you want, but it's just good damage, lots of EDP, just his orientation in that sense. Double column generation is nice, but the lock is kind of yikes. Like, I don't like it that much. I guess he can be used against spinners though, because you lock the orb so they can't be spun away. Awoken Bind Clear is a cool additional effect, but I don't know. The locks are kind of a double-edged sword that is leaning towards the edge of not beneficial. That's how I feel about it. Has a blob-based automatic follow-up attack effect, but attack multiplier is based on combo count, which is pretty unfortunate for farming. Pretty lackluster for any sort of endgame content, so just don't run them in there, or if you want, just be careful. Make sure you team build very well. Moving on to the ultimate evolution, we have different style of damage awakenings with 3 7C instead of 3 VDP. Of course, I'm biased towards 7C, so I prefer this a lot more. Still has a VDP though, unlike Rengoku, so he has piercing power still. So I like this form a lot more. So unlike Rengoku, where you have to pick between VDP and not VDP, and Giyu has VDP in both forms. And this form looks a lot better because he'll consistently deal damage every turn and can still pierce. So yeah, excited, much more excited for the Evo. Rare Spinner active with full shield effect. The Spinner effect, there's only a couple cards with it, so it's always cool to see another one. Of course, there are faster inheritable options like Leonard Testarossa, and I think there was another spinner card, Mayoi Hachikuji. So Leonard is from Fujimi and Mayoi is from Monogatari. Both of those are faster, but Giyu has a full shield along with his spinner, so you can technically abuse it for a free turn of orb generation, right? Like you just sit there and you spin out orb after orb after orb, and you don't have to worry about anything because Giyu will just protect you for that one turn. So I guess that's cool in that sense. Leader skill wise, the Ultimate Evolution has strong water blob swipe lead that generates 3 extra combos when you match the blob, which means that an identical leader and helper pairing can reach 7 combos with just 1 blob of water orbs. So it's pretty great, nice for farming, can be abused with some other cards like Sabito and Makomo. So there's that. The equip has 4 water OE along with a full cleric active and some orb generation. If we're talking about 4 OE alone, then it competes with cards like Egg of Envy from Sin Dragons and Key Heroes. You have Kororo from Shaman King Collab. You have Mezre, which is Norza's one, and you have Ukyo Sword from Samurai Shodown. So there's some competition. It's a little bit packed in terms of that, and you know, some of the options are pretty cheap. Like Kororo is a bottom rarity roll, so that's pretty cheap already. So yeah, stiff competition. But Giyu's active is pretty strong. I think it puts him, I wouldn't say a cut above the rest, but it differentiates him enough to have some value. Next, we have Shinobu Kocho, and she is the Insect Hashira. So Shinobu, in her base form, she's a very strong anti-devil VDP option, similar to Virgil. In fact, she doesn't quite reach that level of devil destruction because Virgil is just insane. But She almost gets there. Almost. Her active is simple random orb generation with the poison effect. And poison, the last time I recall it being used, it's pretty archaic. Like the last time I remember it being used is against like a 10 in AA4, right? You poison them and then you hit them down to super resolve, and then the poison would take them out for the rest. But other than that, it's very, very, very niche, so I haven't seen it being used much, especially because status immunity shields make it impossible to poison anybody nowadays. The leader skill wise, she's a super basic combo lead until you blob 9 dark orbs, then you get both automatic follow-up and extra combos, but no shield sucks for endgame, so she's kind of iffy in that respect. The ultimate evolution has 4 skill boosts and 3 7C with potentially VDP or full poison resist via super awakening, so that's pretty good damage kit plus the skill boost to transform cards. And then her active is a super fast quad color board change, but it includes poison. However, you also have heal orbs, so if your recover multiplier is good enough or you're confident in your recovery, then you can just match the poison and the heals that should counteract each other just fine. In her leader skill, she's a health conditional shield, which equals unstable survivability. As I mentioned earlier, it's just I don't like it. Multi-hits, just large hits in general, that'll take you down. Very, very inconsistent, very, very yikes. The poison damage void effect though is pretty unique. There's like, I don't know, Lucia, you got Yugi, Bakura, you have Gaslow, you got Fero. There's very few cards with this, so I guess it's pretty unique in that sense. But her unstable survivability means she's pretty inconsistent in endgame. At least the attack multiplier can be consistently activated though, because you match 7 combos every turn and voila, you got damage. OP. Moving on to the equip, it's a reasonable cooldown speed for 2-turn delay, interesting poison effect as well. But then I look at Raytheon's equip and it's basically just a whalier version with very, very minor improvements. So I'd rather take Raytheon's equip for its accessibility because I don't see that much more value in Shinobu's equip, which is unfortunate. Raytheon is from Monster Hunter, by the way, in case you're wondering. Alright, next we have Akaza. So Akaza is the upper rank 3rd? Upper rank 3? I don't remember. Oh, I think the name is in his transform in the card, so I don't know if that's spoiling anything. But yeah, he's a Kizuki. I guess I'll leave it at that. Moving on to his card, he's a super long transform cooldown, but he has pretty real damage awakenings pre-transform. He has triple 7C, and he's got some time extends and some SBRs, so it's not like he's left with nothing before transforming, so that's nice. No skill boost sucks a bit though, because his cooldown is ridiculously long at 30 turns. The burst in the transform active is convenient. I'm not really sure how else to put it. It's like I can't think of a specific scenario where I really needed this one burst for this one moment, so yeah, it's just nice. Also has good survivability before transforming with 9x effective health and effective recovery. It's just that he has no attack multiplier, so you can't really be offensive in any way, but once you do transform, then it looks a lot better because he gets a whopping 5-7C. Like, the 5-7C is the first card to ever have that, and it's not like his attack stat is nerfed. Its attack stat is 4041, so it's already really high. So it's ridiculous damage from Akaza, and yeah, he's just got massive personal firepower. Now, if you look at his active, it's also pretty insane as well, because you're guaranteed full color activation, right? You get 3 fire, 3 water, 3 wood, 3 light, 3 dark, 3 heal every other turn, because it's on a 2-turn cooldown. And that means you can activate your guard break, you can activate your skill charge very consistently. So it's honestly really amazing in that sense. Pretty tanky leader skill with super high recovery multiplier. But based on attacking with 4 or more colors, so it can be inconsistent. You know, rainbow leads in general are, but because we are talking about Akaza, his active really solves all those rainbow inconsistencies, right? Like if you use them, you're going to have rainbow activation every other turn. If you have 2 of them, you're going to have rainbow activation every turn, provided you can transform them, of course, but you're going to have rainbow consistency much better with this active. The passive typing requirement of the leader skill is based around devil types, so you know, options like, I don't know, you have Evo Muzan, I guess. That's an interesting pick. You have New Year Rish, very strong rainbow devil. Can't really think of any other options off the top of my head, but there are 2 right there. The equip has 2 team HP, 2 fire AoE, and a physical killer. And the physical killer is actually a pretty reasonable value for short 2, ultra 2, because there's a couple floors that are just purely physical. So this equip will help really bypass through those. I think what's more valuable though is the combination of team HP and fire AoE, which is actually really insane because again, fire teams equals Seina right now. And Seina, with the arrival of some cards in Demon Slayer like Tanjiro and Nezuko, she's very, very reliant on team HP and fire AoE, and so there's a very compact equip to fit all that utility in as well. What's also great is that Akaza's equip, the active is a full board changer, which is very, very nice for stuff like the Will-O-Wisp. In Ultra 2, you have Okuni in both Short 2 and Ultra 2 that you want a full board to deal with, so very, very, very nice in that sense. Okay, next we have Kanao Tsuyuri. Oh god, I can't pronounce this right. Kanao Tsuyuri. Yeah, I don't speak Japanese, so I'm just trying my best here. Okay, so this is the orb skin, so you can buy her for 20 bucks. She doesn't have an evolution form, so this is just one form, 4 SB, 3 7CM FUA, and you can get VDPSA. So I really like the damage kit on this, and you even got some utility off the FUA as well. The active has a reasonable 2-turn delay on a 10-turn cooldown, so it's just, you know, bread and butter. It's okay. It also generates a column of healers for easy activation of FUA, so that's nice too. Carries a nice time buff as well, so if you need that as well, go for it. It's just a hodgepodge of effects that are nice, but overall the combination of the effects don't really amount to much of anything, right? Like sometimes when you put cards together and you gain synergy, you get an effect that it's greater than the sum of its parts. However, here in Kanao's active, it's just a hodgepodge of things that doesn't really do anything in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I just don't see much of anything there. Moving on to leader skill, pretty hefty survivability there as long as you match Dark and Heal with a decent attack multiplier and a nice cushion of move time. Really nice cushion. Of course, the question is, can you get the consistent activation of the shield, which means you're relying on orb generation systems. Something like the raccoon system, the Furaku system could work. Furaku is the raccoon from Mystics and Spectres, and he can system with 4 of them with double column generation and haste on 7-turn cooldown, and then you just swipe and trigger. So that's really cool. Equip has Unbindable and 2 Recover Bind Awakenings, which is very similar to the recently released equip forms of the Wisdom Kings, and the Wisdom Kings is like Akala, Kundali, and Vajra Bhairava. I can't do this, guys. There's just so many different cultures. I'm already having a hard time pronouncing Japanese names. Please bear with me. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce that. I'm just trying my best. Okay, anyway, the equip is just very similar, and you already have replacements, so Kanao is just a very disappointing card, and if you're looking to buy the orb skin, save yourself the 20 bucks. Don't buy it. It's terrible. Okay, now that's all for the top rarity and mid rarity, and now we're just at the bottom rarity, 6 stars. So I'm just gonna spout out some brief thoughts on each of them, starting with Yushiro. So he's a nice full board active with a rare full defense break, possibly could be useful for the Dragon Scene and Short to Ultra 2, though I doubt it because he's not really that great in other respects. He's the only one with the equip though, and he's the second equipped to have 3 Recover Bind Awakenings. First is the Celine card from Gung-Ho Collab, and I know this off the top of my head because Celine was the only card that I do not have from that collab, and it irks me to this day. I can't believe I got everything else but the bottom rarity, but it is what it is. Next we have Tamayo. It has 5 Recover Bind Awakenings along with full gem resist and potentially 4 skill boosts via Super Awakening. The only comparisons in terms of like just the sheer number of Recover Bind Awakenings are the Toy Dragons, which also have 5 Recover Bind. So I guess it puts Tamayo at a bit of a disadvantage because the Toy Dragons are perfectly and easily farmable. Her active though, I think kind of sets her apart because she has a short heart row generation that also locks, which could be really, really valuable when activating the spinner latent that triggers off the Recover Bind Awakening, and the Recover Bind Awakening triggers off a row of heal orbs. And if you have a row of heal orbs, right, an active that generates a row of heal orbs that locks, it means it's also immune to spinner. So it's just a great option for that one very, very niche situation. I think it does have really cool farming utility, but it is really neat. Next, we have Sabito and Makomo. So Sabito is probably the chase bottom rarity card of the entire event, because Sabito and Makomo, the two of them are double column system card for water attribute, because they generate water and heal columns and haste on 7-turn cooldown. So if you loop them together, you can have a system with 4 of them, and this can be immensely useful for farming, especially because when you swipe the heal column, that's an instant Fua, that's an instant resolve bypasser. So it's really nice in that sense. Next, we have Sakonji Urokodaki. So Awakenings and Leer Skill aside, his active is a really nice AoE laser with substantial damage and no additional effects. And the no additional effects is pretty cool, because when you're button farming, which this active is would primarily be used for, right? Just to button, deal damage, kill the floor, and move on. As the essence of button farming, this is great because there's no additional effect. The unfortunate part is that the cooldown is slightly long and a bit unwieldy in that sense, but it's nice for button farming because there's no additional effects. And no, keep in mind, additional effects take time, right? Like for example, when you have an active that has an attack buff and a recovery buff and orb generation, they happen somewhat separately, right? Like, you know, the attack buff and the recovery buff fly up and show themselves on the top right of the screen, and the orbs that they generate after that takes time. However, if you just have an active that just does orb generation, that orb generation is gonna happen much faster. So it's very, very focused towards like optimized farming, I guess, but it is something to consider when you look at them. Next, we have Haganezuka. He's a super fast burst and dual attribute orb generation. And to be honest, when I saw the firewood, I kept thinking to myself, possibly valuable for Grigory, possibly. You never know. He might be useful for Grigory. Last but not least, we have Enmu. So Enmu, pretty slow delay and multi-turn color void. And color void is attribute absorb void, right? Decent damage stick for low rarity card. Good set of killers and up to 3/7C. So I think the active is a little bit of a albatross there, but he's a pretty good damage stick for the low rarity that he is. I mean, I guess as a 6-star, he's higher than most bottom rarity cards, but he's pretty strong damage stick for a bottom rarity card. And that's the conclusion of this review for Demon Slayer. Oh my god. It's insane. I mean, I think what I want to say is this collab in Japan came out 6 months ago, and since then there's been a lot of power creep. So getting it now, I do have to say, is a little bit late, especially with all the power creep, but there's no denying that there's still great value in this machine. So I love it. I mean, I'm gonna roll it not because of the gameplay value, but because I enjoy the franchise. I'm gonna try to get every card. Of course, I'm gonna get shafted. I'm gonna weep and cry and quit pad. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Please help me out. Like, send me your good luck. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it was another long-winded review, but I do try to be as thorough as I can. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys got any comments, questions, concerns, let me know in the comments down below, right? Like, let's say you think of another use for another card, right? Like, let's say you look at Rengoku and you say, it could be also used for this, and you didn't note that. Well, I'd like to know, right? I'm only one person. I don't know everything, right? So I'd like to know if you got some other use or some other value, some other niche for any of the cards in this machine. Because maybe I'm not considering everything, you know? So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. With that, I'm gonna end the video. Don't want to take more of your time. Thank you guys so much. See you guys next time. Good luck and have fun.